Welcome back to our channel, ladies and gentlemen. When Daktari William Samoei Ruto ascended to power, he began on a very high note. He wanted to be everywhere, speaking about everything, acting about everything. There are three things that he embarked on, and if you ask me today, they have been thwarted or they are slowly being exposed. William Ruto decided to become the mouthpiece of the African Union. He manifested himself, presented himself as someone who was really interested in the affairs and in the interest, who was really acting in the interest of the African Union. To be very precise, he pretended as if he was talking ill about the West, at some point saying that we should not depend so much on the dollar. And people looked at him and said, this is the new kid on the block. We have finally found a new Pan-Africanist. As we speak today, the D-Day came when he was supposed to represent and champion the interest of Africans at the Russia-African Summit. He failed to attend because his masters had warned. The US did not want him to go. The other thing he embarked on was to try and be a peacekeeper. In Congo, we have our soldiers there. And when recently we had an altercation and a political strife in Sudan, William Ruto was appointed because he had talked too well. He was talking too much about the African unity at the African Union. IGAD decided to present him and appoint him as the man who was to become a neutral arbiter in Sudan. They rejected him. Just recently, when we had again a coup in Niger, he really condemned those acts of taking over power in something that he called goes against the tenets of democracy. Back at home, people are asking whether William Ruto understands what we mean by democracy, because when people go to the streets to protest in accordance to what is envisaged in the law, the police is busy butchering people. So it's easily being exposed about all these things. The third thing that William Ruto embarked on was to present himself at the international level as a president who is really concerned about the climatic change. Especially, he came back home and instructed that we had a target of planting, I don't know whether it was 1 million trees in a year or something. And at some point I saw Charlene Ruto, a very good Kenyan, championing and heading this tree planting, moving from one place to the other. And people thought that this is the time when we want to plant more trees and we want to see to it that we turn Kenya green. But turns out that everything that William Ruto does, you wonder whether he means well, because he says one thing but acts on the other. The cutting down of trees was banned in 2018, courtesy of the leadership of former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. So William Ruto, at a time when we thought that he was really serious about logging and anti-logging, lifted that ban. And within very few days, we saw people cutting down trees very carelessly. And this attracted the attention of the Law Society of Kenya. And they went to court. If you look at what is happening in Kenya today, William Ruto moves on from one court to the other. If you talk about the GMO, it is the Law Society of Kenya together with other parties who went to the courts, and the genetically modified organism was stopped because William Ruto was trying to force it down our throats. So it is the Law Society of Kenya versus William Samoei Ruto. Now when you look at William Ruto talking at those environmental and climatic summits, you will see a president who is very serious, concerned about the climatic impact in Kenya. Yet back at home, he allows logging of trees, and this forced the Law Society of Kenya to take him to court. Ever since William Ruto ascended to power, how many times do you think he has gone to court? If you start counting, the case on GMO, this is now the case on logging, on that cutting of trees. We have a case pending, that of Okiya Mutata. He was taken to court when he decided that people like the Chief Economist Advisor and people like Malala, who is the Secretary General to the UDA, will start attending cabinet meetings. And some of these things are illegal in every sense. And he was taken to court. I think I'm even forgetting others. But ever since he assumed office, less than 1 year, he has been taken to court many times, more than any other president in Kenya. And that indicts his advisor, the Attorney General. And you wonder, really, is he really being advised well? And if he's advised, is he really taking the pieces of advice that is given? Someone was saying that William Ruto only has one advisor. It is William Ruto himself. He listens to himself. So the Law Society of Kenya took him to court, and the court granted them the ban, or suspended the lifting of the ban. And the court said, as I just read very fast, the Republic of Kenya in the Environment and Land Court of Kenya at Nairobi City. Court name is Milimani. The case is number that one. Citation, because you have the document there. Let's go to the last, the prayers that they were granted. It said that they are granted these orders, that the application is satisfied as urgent, and that the respondent and the interested parties have 5 days to respond to the application. And I know the Attorney General will respond. I don't know whether he's acting on the interest of Kenyans. Number 3, that the petitioner has leave to file a further affidavit within 3 days of service. And that number 4, the application to be heard inter partes virtually on 14th August 2023 by saa 4 hapo. And that the prayers number 2, 3, and 4 are granted until 14th August 2023, and that given under my hand and seal of the Honorable Court on this first day of August. So the courts were granted those prayers. And this is the reason I'm telling you that when you look at William Samoei Ruto, when he speaks so much about planting trees and he lifts the ban on logging, you wonder, why do we have a double speak from a government that, you wonder, where are the policies? And do they mean well? Because we understand, we all know the impact of cutting down trees. The first time Rigathi Gachagua commanded and allowed people to get into the msitu hapo in what we call a shamba system, William Ruto later reversed that decision, and now it has come back again. It reminds us of some days back in 2008-2009 when Raila Amolo Odinga, as a prime minister then, banned cutting down of trees. And William Ruto told his people that Raila Amolo Odinga was doing this in bad faith because they wanted to invade the forest and cut down trees. And later you saw the implication. When we have trees in the environment, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, even our rivers, when you look at the impact, you'll realize that most of our rivers will have water when we have our trees. Already Kenya is battling with a lot of problems. Drought is one of them. We cannot say that we are serious about drought management when we cut down trees. And the Law Society of Kenya will continue to expose William Ruto to the international community. Because when the courts bar William Ruto and lifts the suspension of his authority, then anyone who is watching and following the Kenyan politics and what is happening, the ambassadors, the international community, and the business people and investors, they know very well that William Ruto doesn't mean well. It reminds me, as I finish, of the sentiments of the Vice Secretary General of the UN, Madam Mina Mohammed, I think, who said that when she met William Ruto, she didn't trust him. Back at home, we also don't trust him because of such. He speaks one thing implements the other. And I want to pray with our courts to ensure that they speak with authority. We need to conserve our environment. My problem with the courts, I don't really trust them. And if they mean well, let them also decide to stand with Kenyans in the Okia Mutata case of the Finance Bill 2023. I don't know what to think, but that is my take.